What's up, YouTube? I am back. I am reviewing your guys' work. I am doing my best to pass my knowledge on. Over on Instagram, a handful of folks were kind enough to ask for advice. They wanted my opinion on how I think their work could be a little bit better, what they might be doing wrong. As always on these videos, I'm always gonna recommend it's just practice. If you're learning one thing per project, you are winning. I always aim to learn like one thing. Sometimes projects are just seat time and practice and finesse. There's so much that goes into leatherwork. There's so many different tools, so many different techniques. It's actually a little absurd how complex leather tooling and leather crafting can be. So, I mean, you gotta engineer, you gotta measure like a craftsman to make sure things fit well. You have to have the artistry of an artist. Like, if you're learning one thing, regardless of the metric, you're doing great. So my biggest piece of advice is just slow and steady with this wins the race. You know, you might have the knowledge, but you don't have the craftsmanship. Like, there's so many different elements. So with all that being said, I'm not stop wasting your time with intro schematics. So this first person, so she has been doing it on and off for about 3 years, she says, mainly as a hobby. She does accessories, cuffs, purse patches, and stuff like that. Her biggest concern is when she puts down color and then goes over it with stain or dye and it makes it look worse. She sent me some pretty solid stuff, honestly. This first one with the little donkey head, I actually think that it's really cute. There's only two real things I could say about this. The first one is, I think it would look a lot cooler if the donkey like came off the actual border rather than kind of have it just like floating here. I think you would get a much more kind of complete look. However, the longer I stare at this, the more I kind of think it's cool. It looks like almost like a painting or something. Other than that, you know, maybe doing like a border stamp or something rather than those dots. But honestly, really cute little donkey head. I actually really like this cuff as well. I think it's super solid. This is me just being super nitpicky, is maybe making those flowers look a little bit more full. I know that's kind of the look of that flower, but sometimes with leather crafting not being super photorealistic all the time, sometimes giving it a little bit more of a stylized version can make it look a little bit nicer. The only thing maybe with the stain in the paint that I can see is the coverage on those flowers. Like, you kind of leave too many little open spaces. What I would suggest, don't necessarily paint every single individual petal. It looks like every single petal is individually painted. You can see basically all those little black lines that go up where you picked up the brush and it doesn't continue. So what I would suggest is, like, anywhere that the petals actually touch each other is to get down in those cracks. It's gonna give you a more finished look. I've seen your work before and I've always thought you had pretty sick like horse heads and like donkey heads and animal heads. They're pretty solid. You know, other than that, the stain, like, maybe don't wipe off so much of the excess, leaving a little bit of extra stain deposited in those cracks in the tooling and stuff. That can give your like tooling a more like full finished look. I've never really had to articulate this before. Like, I like to think of stain almost as some kind of tool. It's like almost like I would think of a swivel knife, or I would think of a beveler. You want to use it to create a certain effect. When I started thinking of stain in that way, I really started to think a lot differently about what stain actually did to a piece. Like, before, I would just wipe the stain on as like a part of the process. You know, if it didn't stain the way I wanted it to, I would go like, oh, I'm just not using the stain right, or something's wrong with something else. Where if you think about it more of it as a tool, you start paying attention to little details, like your beveler, for example. You can go, I'm not stamping close enough to get a smooth bevel, or I'm not hitting it as hard as I should, or I'm hitting it too hard. Like, there's so many little intricacies with it. That's the same way I like to think about stain. What I would even suggest, take something really easy, like a little tandy flower pattern or something, and you can rub it on really easy and replicate it a bunch of different times and sit there, tool it the exact same way, do everything the exact same way, but go and like try different techniques and stains and finishes and stuff. You might need to wipe off more, you might need to wipe off less. That was a long lesson. I'm gonna try and rifle through everything else. I think that's probably gonna be the best advice for you. These earrings, yeah, like the ones that I like the most are where you left the most stain on. You know, your floral is actually pretty good. I don't know if you drew that on, if that was a pattern, but I do like it. I do think you're missing some like texturing and stuff, like you're missing a pear shader and some scallop tools and stuff like that to really make this pop. It doesn't look like you put any stain on this. I think maybe your stain problem, you're a little nervous to commit to stain, because I know how hard that can be, like doing a piece and then ruining it with the stain at the end. I'm actually gonna hop over to your Instagram and take a look at some stuff. Like this letter thing you did is really sick. I actually really like this. I think this is super rad. I think the only thing you're missing on this one is like some texturing and some like decorative stamping. Adding in some pear shaders and some scallop tools and stuff like that can really help that floral come to life. I would definitely say you overcoming your fear of using the stain would definitely improve your work quite a bit. What I would recommend is using some kind of resist product, with whether that be acrylic resin, super sheen, tan coat, like anything like that. I think is gonna be what you're probably looking for. That's gonna help resist some of the stain actually absorbing into the surface of your leather. I pretty much put resist on everything. All right, so this next dude, I think this is his first stab at tooling. He says that he makes like basket weave stuff and like serpentine patterns and does like some geometric stuff. He didn't attach any of that. I mean, I see the craftsmanship on this strap, like it's really nice. Like you got a little nice concho. He has really good bleed knots. The stitching's pretty damn straight and fine. The craftsmanship is actually super good. I think it's just a matter of practicing your tooling a little bit better, dude. Kind of a hard picture to see too, but I see some of the lines like aren't beveled. You wanna like make sure that you're beveling everything. Especially in the beginning, I always recommend people that it's in the very, very beginning when you're learning how to do this. I'd rather have everything tooled correctly, sloppily, than things tooled incorrectly, perfectly. I think it's more important to understand the flow of floral and the layering of all of it. Down the line, that's something that's gonna just happen over time to get better at smoothness, so don't beat yourself up over unsmooth bevels, but I would definitely be beveling all those other lines up top. That stuff up there, up on the top flower looks good with the pear shadering. Just make sure to go in and bevel all your lines more. It's gonna give your flowers more depth. It's gonna just look a lot nicer. Okay, so our last dude of the day says he's been doing leatherwork for about 2 years. For about 2 years in, you're like, I mean, I was right about where you were at in 2 years. I think that's when you really start fine tuning your stuff, kind of. Like you kind of learn the basics, and once you get the basics down, which is what it looks like you've done, you start learning the cool little tricks. Okay, so right off the jump, we're going into the skeleton wallet, which is sick as crap, dude. I mean, this thing is really rad. The craftsmanship looks pretty damn solid. Like your stitching is really good, pretty impressive. Now your tooling is pretty sick too, man. So I mean, I really like this thing. You know, I would say that if you're gonna go with this much color, just go like balls to the walls with color. I would almost have rather have seen this skeleton with the white face and those flowers in the background without color. You're in that weird limbo spot where you're pretty proficient, but you need to maybe touch up on some of your art skills a little bit. When I say that, I don't mean like your designs are bad or you're not good as an artist, but there's like little things that like, when I was saying in the beginning, there's so many different elements. Sometimes you don't think about certain elements of the artist side of it, where like, I think this piece would look substantially better if we had finished painting off that chief skull. Like you could even leave those, you can still leave the dark black sockets in the eyes, that's fine, but paint the skull white. You know, finish painting the headdress. Like you could have, you know, I don't know if you're going with red, white, and blue on purpose, but you could have like scattered those colors throughout the headdress a little bit. The little medicine wheel part on his ear just looks a little crazy as it is, just because you can't really see what's going on. But if you maybe like, you know, added even just little blotches of color to show kind of there's some stuff going on, like it would look a lot better than just it being random as hell looking. But like that, like other than that, it's really it. Like I could just only really complain about the color choices you had. Your tooling itself on this thing is pretty solid. This is definitely like a style. It's definitely not like traditional Sheridan Western style tooling, but that's fine because I don't do traditional Sheridan work either. I like that wallet though. It's really sick. Like this next piece right here, it's pretty sick. I like it. Your cowboy hat's really good. Like you got a lot of really good fundamentals. Your bevels look really clean, really nice. Just like if you wanted to make that cowboy hat stick out a little bit better, you know, maybe, I mean, you don't have to paint it, but you could always hit it with like a darker stain, like, and make that cowboy hat pop a little bit nicer. Your like little bull riding wallet, I like that. That's sick. Belt with the basket weave and the buck stitch. That shit looks super clean. That's very pretty. You've been like the hardest person to give advice to, because you're showing a lot of promise. You're showing a lot of abilities. Like, you got a filigree belt, which is really sick. Not a lot of people can do those. So like, that's promise. Just practice on the filigree. The more you practice the filigree, the better you're gonna get at it. But I mean, you're making good progress. I like the commitment to doing like legit pieces, but you're like willing to try new stuff. That's huge. I think if you've worked on your flow of your floral a little bit more, and you worked a little bit on the color, I think that would give you the biggest result. I would mainly just say practice. From what I can see of how often you post, I don't know if that's a direct reflection of when those things are made, but ultimately this round, you guys, was just practice, trying new things, all that stuff. I hope I helped you guys out. Thank you guys for watching this video. It was fun. I've been talking for too long, and having a hard time with my words. So like, comment, subscribe, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And until next time.